So we're going to talk a little bit about the history of surveying, just so you're aware of what those things might be. So that's where we'll kind of start today. So we obviously know that surveying existed a long, long time ago. And if you look back in the Babylonian age, by looking at the structures and architecture that they had back then, we know that they figured out the 3-4-5 triangle. I think if you ask most people, go back as far in history, where was that first evidence of surveying? And most people say the pyramids. So, there's different types of pyramid construction. You can see those there in the photographs. We know that they use some type of a simple plumb line and right angle type instruments. Obviously, that's what they needed to be able to create those pyramids. And if surveying has gone out and looked at the pyramids and used our high-tech methods that we have now, and the base of the pyramids are square to about 0.2 meters out of 230 meters. So it's 0.09% out of square. That's pretty darn awesome considering the technology or lack thereof that they had in those times. So here's some, famous land surveyors. A lot of those folks you can see there are presidents, but we had quite a few people in the United States that were surveyors that you've probably heard about before in history class. There's two different types of surveys. There's geodetic surveys, and when we talk about geodetic surveys, it takes into account that the Earth is obviously round. We work off of a network of control points, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but when you do geodetic surveying, you take into account the curvature of the Earth. And then the other type of surveying is called plane surveying. So everything that you see there are in a plane. We assume that the Earth is flat, and we have, straight out lines and angles are sufficient. We don't necessarily have to worry too much about long linear features. When we get so large, then eventually you have to take into account the surface of the Earth, and a plane survey just won't work. So when we talk about geodetic, again, that's taking into account the curvature of the Earth, and you have to work off of control points, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. We also have plane surveying. So notice that's P-L-A-N-E, plane. Those are the most common ones. Any type of construction work or laying out a property map for a subdivision, anything like that is plane surveying. And typically that's, legal boundaries, that sort of thing, are all use the method of plane surveying, which is mostly what we'll focus on in this course. So just here's a little graphic to show you one more time. If the brown there is the surface of the Earth, we kind of had this imaginary geoid or some type of a datum that we use that's curved. And then when we do geodetic surveys, you'll see the green line there that kind of goes around in an arc. That's what we would use. But then when we're talking about plane surveying, you see the blue horizontal line there, and that's kind of how we look at things. So again, you've been to the beach, or maybe you've been to the desert and kind of seen, yes, you can technically see the curvature of the Earth, or you've been up in one of the tall towers out in Vegas or Chicago or whatnot and been able to see the curvature of the Earth. So you got to get really far away for that curvature to really come into play. So like I said, most of what we do in this class is plane surveying. So there's different types of surveys, and we'll go through each one of those. Here's a control survey. So this might be something to set those precise horizontal and vertical positions that serve as reference points for other surveys. So, just kind of depends on what we're talking about, but a lot of times there are reference points that go back to certain parts and pieces, and sometimes those are done by the county, and sometimes they're done by the United States Geological Survey. It just kind of depends on what government agency they're working for. There's also topographic surveys. Those are done. Here's an example of a USGS map. Obviously, a topographic survey takes into account the natural and man-made features and contours of the Earth to create a map that shows us elevations rather than just, the horizontal lay of the land. It also shows us the vertical. Here's an example of a property or boundary survey, and that's going to show us the property lines as well as the adjacent structures and homeowners and that sort of thing. And that's something that you find at your local county courthouse. We also have site surveys or plot or lot surveys, and those are typically done like if you were doing construction and wanting to put a new piece of property in, and you were going to, be using that for construction or permit purposes. So it's really important to have a site survey on your permit because you need to know, as like in this example here, where are the utility lines? How are those going to be run on the property? Where's the water flowing? How are you going to catch the water that flows over your land? Where's that going to go? So a lot of times you have site surveys done for permit type work. And here's an example of a construction survey. So you can see there's lots of plumb lines out there, and so those are used to establish appropriate elevations and measurement points so that your construction and engineering crew can work off of kind of reference or datum points. So that's what you're seeing there in that example. So when we talk about setting perfect, precise benchmarks, we look at the National Geodetic Survey or United States Geological Survey, either one, and they have different benchmarks and standards that we would measure off of. So those points have precise XYZ coordinates that we can go back and use as reference points when we're doing geodetic surveying. We also have the National Spatial Reference System, and so that's in conjunction with NOAA and the United States Coast Guard and Geodetic Surveys. So it's all kind of, they work together on those to come up with these benchmarks. And those are typically metal plates that are buried in concrete. I know here in Montgomery, not the nice bridge that goes over the Canal River, but actually the bridge that's close to Dairy Queen, as you go out that way on Route 61, it has a benchmark located in it. So those benchmarks, you can look them up online, and again, they have precise coordinates there as well as a precise vertical elevation as well. So you can look that information up in their database. And so here's another example of a website you can go to take a look at all those different data points and be able to go out and find those. So here's an example of the NGS survey control map, and you can go out and take a look at that website and check it out yourself. So that's all I have for this one. Well, up next will be surveying tools.